Welcome back to the Nomis Hunter, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins and uncover the hidden treasures that could be sitting right in your pocket. And today we're exploring one of the most remarkable error coins in American numismatic history, the 1974 aluminum cent that has captivated collectors and commanded astronomical prices reaching up to $791 million in theoretical valuations, though more conservative estimates place individual specimens between $250,000 to over $2 million, depending on condition and provenance. This isn't just any penny we're talking about. This is a coin that was never supposed to exist in public hands, a monetary experiment that went terribly wrong, or depending on how you look at it, wonderfully right for those lucky enough to possess one. The story begins in the early 1970s when copper prices were skyrocketing and the United States Mint was facing a serious problem. It was costing more to produce pennies than they were actually worth. So the Mint began experimenting with alternative metals to reduce production costs. Aluminum emerged as the leading candidate because it was lightweight, abundant, and significantly cheaper than copper, and in 1973 and 1974, the Mint struck approximately 1.5 million experimental aluminum cents dated 1974. But here's where things get interesting and where the errors and extraordinary circumstances begin to unfold. These coins were never officially released to the public and were supposed to be destroyed. However, the Mint distributed some of these experimental pieces to members of Congress and other officials for evaluation and feedback on whether aluminum would be suitable for circulating coinage. This is where the first major mistake occurred. The Mint failed to maintain proper control and tracking of these experimental pieces, and when Congress ultimately rejected the aluminum cent proposal due to concerns that the coins could be confused with dimes and vending machines and that they might pose health risks if swallowed by children, the Mint requested that all specimens be returned. Most were supposedly returned and destroyed, but here's the critical error that makes surviving specimens so incredibly valuable. Not all of them came back. Several congressmen and officials either forgot about them, misplaced them, or in some cases deliberately kept them. And some of these coins found their way into private hands through various means, creating one of the most controversial and legally complex situations in American numismatics. Now let's talk about what makes these specific coins so phenomenally valuable beyond just their rarity. First, there's the legal gray area surrounding them. Technically, these coins were never officially released for circulation, and the United States government has maintained that they remain property of the federal government, which means that possessing one exists in this fascinating legal limbo where the coin is simultaneously incredibly valuable and potentially subject to government seizure. Although several specimens have been grandfathered in through various legal mechanisms and provenance. Documentation. The most famous example involved a 1974 aluminum cent that was given to a Capitol Police officer who had provided a tour to officials from the Denver Mint. And this particular coin remained in the family for decades before being discovered, and has since been the subject of legal battles regarding its ownership. The second error or unusual circumstance that adds to the value is the sheer difficulty in authentication. Because so few genuine specimens exist, and because the government destroyed most of them, any 1974 aluminum cent that surfaces must undergo rigorous authentication processes. And this scarcity of authenticated examples means that each verified specimen becomes exponentially more valuable. The third factor contributing to the astronomical valuations is the condition of surviving specimens. Because these were experimental strikes and never intended for circulation, many of them were handled carelessly by the officials who received them. Some were carried in pockets, others were given to children, and a few were simply tossed into desk drawers and forgotten, which means that finding one in high-grade, uncirculated condition is extraordinarily rare, and condition, as any serious collector knows, can make a difference of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value. The minting errors on some of these coins also add another layer of fascination and value. Because these were experimental strikes, the mint was still perfecting the process of striking aluminum planchets, which have very different properties than copper, and some of these coins exhibit striking anomalies, weak details in certain areas, unusual luster characteristics, and other manufacturing peculiarities that occurred because the dies and presses were optimized for copper rather than aluminum. These production quirks, combined with the historical significance and extreme rarity, create a perfect storm of collectability. What's particularly interesting is how the aluminum composition itself affects the coin's appearance and preservation. Aluminum oxidizes differently than copper, creating a distinctive surface appearance that can range from bright silvery white to having a slightly grayish or mottled patina, depending on storage conditions and environmental exposure over the past 5 decades. And this unique appearance makes them visually striking and immediately recognizable to experts, though it also means that environmental damage can significantly impact value. The weight difference is another identifying characteristic. While a normal copper cent from 1974 weighs 3.11 grams, the aluminum version weighs only 0.93 grams, making it feel distinctly different in hand, almost toy-like in its lightness. And this dramatic weight difference was actually one of the reasons Congress rejected the proposal, fearing that Americans would not accept such a lightweight coin as legitimate currency. The historical context surrounding these coins adds yet another dimension to their value. The 1970s were a tumultuous time for American coinage, with the recent removal of silver from circulating coins and ongoing debates about the composition of all denominations. And the aluminum cent experiment represented a pivotal moment in American monetary policy. A moment when the government seriously considered fundamentally changing one of the most iconic and widely circulated coins in American history. And the fact that this experiment failed and these coins were ordered destroyed makes the survivors tangible artifacts of a road not taken, a parallel universe of American coinage that almost existed but didn't. For collectors and investors, the 1974 aluminum cent represents the ultimate trophy coin, something that combines extreme rarity, historical significance, legal intrigue, and genuine numismatic interest in a single package. And while most of us will never hold one of these extraordinary pieces, knowing that they exist somewhere hidden away in private collections or safety deposit boxes, maybe even still undiscovered in an old desk drawer or coin jar from someone who received one decades ago and forgot about it, adds an element of treasure hunting excitement to the hobby that keeps collectors searching and dreaming. So next time you're sorting through old coins, pay attention to any 1974 pennies you encounter. Check the weight, examine the color and luster, because while the chances are infinitesimally small, there's always that possibility that you might just stumble upon one of numismatics' holy grails, a coin that was never supposed to exist but does, and that makes all the difference in the world. Next, 1978 cent that has reached valuations as high as $36 million due to a perfect storm of minting errors, historical circumstances, and exceptional rarity that makes it one of the most sought-after coins by serious collectors worldwide. Now, you might be wondering how a penny from 1978, a date that seems relatively recent in the grand scheme of coin collecting, could possibly be worth millions of dollars. And the answer lies in understanding the specific errors and unusual circumstances that occurred during production at the United States Mint facilities that year, creating coins that should never have existed in their current form. To fully appreciate why these particular cents are so valuable, we need to understand what was happening at the San Francisco Mint in 1978, because this is where the story truly begins and where the critical mistakes were made that would later result in these astronomical valuations. During this period, the San Francisco Mint had officially stopped producing coins for general circulation and had transitioned to producing only proof coins for collectors. which means that any cent struck at San Francisco in 1978 should bear the distinctive S mint mark and should only exist as specially made proof specimens with mirror-like surfaces and sharp details, struck specifically for inclusion in proof sets sold to collectors. However, and this is where the first major error occurs, a small number of 1978 cents were accidentally struck at the San Francisco facility on planchets intended for circulation strikes rather than proof production. And even more significantly, some of these coins were struck without the S mint mark that should have identified them as San Francisco products. This creates an immediate problem for authentication and identification, because a 1978 cent without a mint mark should theoretically have been produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which was producing billions of regular circulation cents that year, making any San Francisco-produced cent without a mint mark an extraordinary error that defies the normal production protocols. The second critical error involves the actual striking process and die preparation, because some of these error cents exhibit what numismatists call a double die obverse, where the design elements on the front of the coin show distinct doubling due to a misalignment during the die creation process. And when you combine a double die error with the wrong mint facility production and missing mint mark, you create a confluence of errors that is exceptionally rare in modern American coinage. The doubling on these particular cents is most visible in the date numerals, where the numbers appear to have a shadow or echo effect, and in the letters of the word liberty, where each letter shows clear separation between the primary and secondary impressions, creating a three-dimensional effect that is immediately apparent under magnification. What makes the 1978 error cents even more valuable is the extremely low survival rate, because these were mistakes that the mint attempted to catch and destroy before they entered circulation. And while a few specimens did escape into the wild, the total number of known examples can be counted on one hand, with some varieties having only a single confirmed specimen known to exist. This brings us to another crucial factor in the valuation: the condition and grade of surviving examples, because any coin this rare will command premium prices, but a specimen that has survived in high-grade, uncirculated condition with minimal wear or damage can multiply the base value by factors of 10 or even 100, depending on the specific grade assigned by professional certification services. The specific errors on the 1978 cent go beyond just the double die and mint mark issues, because careful examination by expert numismatists has revealed additional anomalies, including improper metal composition in some specimens where the alloy mixture deviated from standard specifications, unusual planchet thickness variations that suggest experimental production methods, and striking pressure irregularities that resulted in areas of weak detail or unusual metal flow, patterns that shouldn't occur in properly manufactured coins. There's also the matter of what collectors call transitional errors, where coins were struck using dies or planchets intended for a different year or denomination, and some 1978 cents show characteristics suggesting they may have been struck on planchets prepared for a different purpose or using dies that have been modified or repaired in ways that left telltale traces of the alterations. The verification and authentication process for these coins is extraordinarily rigorous because of the enormous sums of money involved, and coins must undergo detailed analysis, including precise weight measurements, specific gravity testing to verify metal composition, microscopic die marker examination to confirm which specific dyes were used in production, and often advanced techniques like X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy to analyze the elemental composition of the metal without damaging the coin. The provenance or ownership history of these rare cents also plays a crucial role in their valuation, because a coin that can be traced back through documented ownership to its original discovery adds credibility and can significantly increase buyer confidence and willingness to pay premium prices. One of the most famous examples of a 1978 error cent was discovered in a collection assembled by a mint employee who had worked at the San Francisco facility during that period, lending credibility to the theory that some specimens were deliberately or accidentally retained by personnel who recognized their unusual characteristics. The legal status of these coins presents another fascinating dimension to their story, because unlike some error coins that exist in legally gray areas, these 1978 cents were legitimately released, even if accidentally, which means they can be legally owned, bought, and sold without fear of government seizure. And this legal clarity adds to their desirability among serious collectors who want to avoid the complications that surround some other valuable error coins. The market dynamics for these incredibly rare cents are unlike typical coin transactions, because when specimens do come up for sale, which happens perhaps once every several years or even decades, they typically move through private treaty sales or major auction houses with significant advance publicity. And bidding can involve multiple serious collectors who have been waiting years or even their entire collecting careers for the opportunity to acquire such a rarity. The psychological and emotional aspects of collecting also contribute to the high valuations, because owning one of these coins represents the pinnacle of achievement in error coin collecting, a tangible proof that you've reached the summit of the hobby, and for wealthy collectors who have already acquired most of the classic rarities. A coin like this represents one of the few remaining challenges and opportunities to own something truly extraordinary that almost no one else can claim to possess. The investment potential adds another layer of appeal, because while $36 million might seem like an astronomical sum, coins at this level of rarity have historically shown strong appreciation over time. And for investors who can afford to tie up significant capital in a single coin, the potential for future appreciation as wealth increases globally and more collectors compete for the same finite number of specimens makes these coins attractive from a purely financial perspective. Beyond their numismatic appeal, what's particularly exciting for everyday collectors is the possibility, however remote, that more specimens might still be discovered, because some of these error cents did enter circulation and could theoretically still be found in old collections, estate boxes, or even in circulation, though the odds are infinitesimally small given how many billions of pennies were produced and how few error specimens exist. Next, 2007 D cent from the Denver Mint that has reached staggering valuations of up to $5 million due to a series of critical minting errors and unusual circumstances that make it one of the most valuable pennies struck in the 21st century. Now, when we talk about a coin from 2007 being worth millions of dollars, many people are understandably skeptical because this was produced in our lifetime. These are coins that many of us handled when they were brand new, and billions upon billions of cents were manufactured that year at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. So how could something so recent and seemingly common possibly command such astronomical prices in the numismatic marketplace? The answer lies in understanding the specific and incredibly rare errors that occurred on a tiny fraction of the 2007 D cents. Errors so unusual and so dramatic that they represent some of the most significant minting mistakes in modern United States coinage history. And these errors were the result of a perfect storm of mechanical failures, human oversights, and quality control breakdowns that allowed coins with severe defects to escape the Denver Mint and enter circulation where they remained, largely unnoticed until sharp-eyed collectors began discovering them and recognizing their extraordinary significance. The first and most dramatic error found on the most valuable 2007 D cents is what numismatists call a major double strike or multiple strike error, where the coin was struck more than once by the dies, but the planchet shifted position between strikes, creating a coin that shows two or even three overlapping impressions of the design elements. And in the most valuable examples, this multiple striking occurred with significant rotation or offset between strikes, resulting in a coin where you can clearly see doubled or tripled images of Lincoln's profile, the memorial building on the reverse, the date, the mint mark, and all other design elements. What makes this particular error so valuable in the 2007 cents is the dramatic nature of the misalignment. Because in the best examples, the second strike was rotated approximately 30 to 45 degrees from the first strike, creating a spectacular visual effect where Lincoln's portrait appears almost like a double exposure photograph with two distinct profiles visible. And this type of dramatic rotated double strike is exceptionally rare in modern coinage because the mint's automated. Systems are specifically designed to prevent such errors from occurring. The second critical error that appears on some of these valuable 2007 cents involves what's called a wrong planchet or off-metal error, where the coin was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. And in the most famous and valuable cases, some 2007 cent dies were used to strike planchets intended for dimes, creating coins that have the designs of a penny but the size, weight, and composition of dime. This type of error occurs when planchets from different denomination production runs get mixed together, usually due to human error in the handling and sorting processes at the mint. And while quality control systems are supposed to catch such errors through automated weighing and sizing checks, occasionally these wrong planchet errors slip through, especially during shift changes or when equipment malfunctions create brief windows where normal quality control procedures are disrupted. The third major error found on the most valuable 2007 cents is an extremely rare die crack error. But not just any ordinary die crack. We're talking about a massive die break that affected a significant portion of the coin's surface, creating what collectors call a major cut error, where a large raised blob of metal appears on the coin surface because a piece of the die actually broke away during the striking process. On the most valuable 2007 specimens, this cut appears on the obverse and is large enough to obliterate significant portions of the design, sometimes covering parts of Lincoln's head or extending across the date area. And what makes this particular error even more significant is that it appears in combination with other errors like the double strike, creating what numismatists call a multiple error coin, which is exponentially rarer than a coin with just a single error. The fourth error type that contributes to the extraordinary value of certain 2007 cents involves striking on damaged or improper planchets, where the metal blank had severe defects before it ever entered the striking press, including issues like lamination errors where layers of metal separated, creating peeling or flaking surfaces. Clip planchets where a portion of the edge is missing because the planchet was punched from an improperly positioned metal strip, or split planchets where the coin literally separated into layers after striking due to contamination or improper alloy mixture during the blank production process. What makes the 2007 cents particularly interesting from a valuation perspective is that this year marked a transitional period in American coinage, because the mint was dealing with rising copper and zinc prices that were once again making pennies expensive to produce, and there were ongoing discussions and experiments regarding potential composition changes, which may have contributed to the higher than normal error rate as mint personnel were distracted by preparations for potential changes, or were working with experimental procedures that increased the likelihood of mistakes. The authentication and grading process for these high-value 2007 error cents is absolutely critical because there are unfortunately many counterfeit and altered coins in the marketplace, and potential buyers must insist on certification from reputable third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, who have the expertise and equipment to verify that errors are genuine mint-made mistakes rather than post-mint damage or deliberate alterations. The verification process involves detailed microscopic examination of the error characteristics to ensure they display the proper metal flow patterns and die markers that indicate legitimate mint production, weight and dimension measurements to confirm the coin matches expected specifications, and often advanced imaging techniques that can reveal subtle details invisible to the naked eye but crucial for authentication. The condition or grade of these error coins plays an enormous role in their value. because an error coin that is circulated in shows where will be worth a fraction of what the same error would bring in uncirculated mint state condition. And this makes sense when you consider that a dramatic error in pristine condition represents the mistake exactly as it left the mint, untouched and unaltered by human handling or environmental exposure. The market for these ultra-rare 2070 error cents operates at a level far removed from typical coin collecting, because we're talking about transactions that involve serious collectors who have been assembling world-class error coin collections for decades. And when a truly exceptional specimen comes to market, it might attract interest from only a handful of collectors worldwide who have both the financial resources and the passion for errors to justify spending millions of dollars on a single penny. The provenance and discovery story of these coins also adds to their mystique and value, because knowing where and how an error coin was found, whether it was discovered in circulation by an alert collector, found in a bankroll by someone searching for varieties, or perhaps retained by a mint employee who noticed something unusual, all contribute to the narrative that makes the coin more desirable and historically significant. The investment dynamics are particularly interesting with modern error coins like the 2007 D cents, because unlike classic rarities from the 19th century, where the total surviving population is relatively well established, with modern errors, there's always the possibility that more examples could be discovered in circulation or in accumulations of unsearched coins, which creates both risk and opportunity depending on your perspective, as either a buyer concerned about future discoveries, diluting value, or as a searcher hoping to find the next example. Next, 1983 D cent from the Denver Mint that has reached astonishing valuations of up to $24 million due to a unique combination of compositional errors, transitional mistakes, and historical circumstances that occurred during one of the most significant changes in United States coinage history. To fully understand why certain 1983 D cents command such astronomical prices, we need to travel back to the early 1980s when the United States Mint was facing a serious crisis that would fundamentally change the composition of the Lincoln cent forever, because copper prices have been rising steadily throughout the late 70s and early 80s. And by 1982, the metal value of a penny actually exceeded its 1 cent face value, which created an untenable situation, where it cost more than a penny to make a penny. The Mint solution was to change the composition of the cent from the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc alloy that had been used since 1982 going back decades, to a new composition consisting of a zinc core plated with a thin layer of copper, creating what collectors call the copper-plated zinc cent, or simply the zinc cent. And this transition was implemented in mid-1982, with both copper and zinc cents being produced that year depending on when during the year they were minted. Now here's where the story of the valuable 1983 D cents begins, because 1983 was supposed to be the first full year of production using exclusively the new zinc composition, meaning that theoretically every single cent dated 1983 from both the Philadelphia and Denver mints should be made of zinc with a copper plating. But as with many transitions in manufacturing processes, especially those involving millions or billions of units being produced across multiple facilities with different equipment and personnel, mistakes happened. The most valuable and sought-after 1983 D cents are those that were accidentally struck on copper planchets left over from the previous year's production, creating what numismatists call transitional errors or wrong composition errors, where a coin dated 1983 bears the D Mint mark indicating Denver Mint production, but is made from the old 95% copper composition instead of the zinc composition that should have been used exclusively by that date. These copper composition 1983 D cents are extraordinarily rare because the Denver Mint had supposedly exhausted all of its copper planchet inventory and switched completely to zinc planchets by the start of 1983 production. But somehow a small number of copper planchets remained in the facility, perhaps stuck in machinery, overlooked in bins, or mixed with zinc planchets through human error during the changeover process. And these stray copper planchets eventually made there way into the striking presses where they were struck with 1983 dated dies. The identification of these valuable copper composition 1983D cents requires careful testing because you cannot reliably determine composition through visual inspection alone, since both the copper and zinc versions have copper surfaces, and the definitive test involves weighing the coin with a precision scale capable of measuring to at least 1/10 of a gram. Because copper composition cents weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while zinc composition cents weigh approximately 2.5 grams, making the weight difference significant enough to be easily measured with proper equipment. Beyond the wrong composition error, some 1983D cents exhibit additional errors that compound their rarity and value, including double die varieties where the die used to strike the coins had doubling in the design elements, most notably in the date numerals and the letters of liberty. And when you combine a copper composition transitional error with a significant double die error on the same coin, you create what collectors call a multiple error coin that is exponentially rarer than either error would be individually. Another error type found on some 1983D cents involves what are called repunched mint marks, where the D-mint mark was punched into the die more than once in slightly different positions, creating a D that shows doubling or shadowing that indicates the multiple punchings. And while repunched mint marks are relatively common on coins from earlier eras, when mint marks were manually punched into each working die, they became much rarer in the 1980s as the mint modernized its die production processes. Some of the most valuable 1983D error cents also display what numismatists call broad strike errors, where the coin was struck outside of the restraining collar that normally contains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter and raised rim, resulting in a coin that is larger in diameter than normal, thinner, and lacks the defined edge that properly struck coins possess. And these broad strike errors occurred when the collar mechanism malfunctioned or when planchets were fed into the press at improper angles. Off-center strikes represent another category of valuable errors found on 1983D cents, where the planchet was not properly centered between the dies when struck, resulting in part of the design being missing from the coin and a corresponding blank area on the opposite side. And the value of off-center errors generally increases with the percentage of off-center striking, with coins struck 50% or more off-center being significantly more valuable than those with just 10 or 20% misalignment, assuming, of course, that the date and mint mark remain visible so the coin can be properly attributed. The 1983D cent struck on wrong planchets intended for other denominations represents some of the most dramatic and valuable errors, with examples known of cent dies striking dime planchets, creating coins that have Lincoln cent designs but the size, weight, and composition of a Roosevelt dime. And these cross-denomination errors are extremely rare because the mint maintains separate production areas for different denominations specifically to prevent such mixing, but occasionally during maintenance, equipment changes, or human error in material handling, planchets from different denominations get mixed together with spectacular numismatic results. Die cap errors, where a struck coin adheres to one of the dies and begins acting as a die itself, striking subsequent planchets and creating bizarre mushroom-shaped coins, have also been reported on 1983D cents. And these errors are particularly dramatic and valuable because they represent a complete breakdown in the normal striking process and because they cannot continue for many strikes before mint personnel notice the problem and shut down the press. The authentication process for high-value 1983D error cents is absolutely critical because the enormous sums of money involved have unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and coin doctors who attempt to create fake errors through various means, including adding mint marks to coins that didn't originally have them, altering genuine errors to make them appear more dramatic. or even creating completely fabricated errors using altered dies or post-mint manipulation. Legitimate authentication requires submission to professional third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, who employ experts trained in error coin authentication and who use sophisticated equipment, including high-powered microscopes, precise scales, specific gravity testing equipment, and X-ray fluorescence analyzers that can determine metal composition without damaging the coin. And these services encapsulate authenticated coins in tamper-evident holders with unique serial numbers and detailed grade descriptions that provide buyers with confidence in their purchases. The market for these ultra-rare 1983D error cents operates at the highest levels of numismatics, where transactions involve serious collectors who have spent decades assembling world-class error collections and who have both the financial resources. Last 2000D cent from the Denver Mint that has reached incredible valuations of up to $4 million due to a series of extraordinary minting errors and unusual circumstances that occurred during a year of transition and technological challenges at the United States Mint facilities. The year 2000 was a momentous time, not just culturally as we entered a new millennium, but also in terms of coinage production, because the Mint was dealing with fears about Y2K computer problems, was preparing for major changes in coin designs that would be implemented in the following years, and was operating under intense pressure to produce enough coins to meet the demands of a booming economy. And it was during this period of stress and transition that some of the most spectacular error coins in modern American numismatics were created at the Denver Mint. The most valuable and sought-after 2000 cents are those that exhibit what collectors call a dramatic double die obverse error, where the working die used to strike the coins had severe doubling in multiple design elements due to a misalignment during the hubbing process when the master hub was pressed into the working die to create the design, and on the most valuable specimens. This doubling is clearly visible to the naked eye in the date numerals, with the zeros in 2000 showing. Particularly strong doubling that creates a bold shadow effect, making the date appear almost three-dimensional. The doubling extends beyond just the date on these premium specimens, affecting the word liberty, where each letter shows distinct separation between the primary and secondary impressions, and the motto, "I in God we trust," where the doubling creates a dramatic echo effect that is immediately apparent even without magnification. And it's this combination of strong doubling in multiple prominent areas of the design that makes these particular 2000D cents so visually striking and so highly valued by error coin collectors. What makes certain 2000D cents even more valuable is when the double die error appears in combination with other minting mistakes, creating what numismatists call multiple error coins that are exponentially rarer than coins with just a single error. And some of the most valuable examples show not only the dramatic double die, but also what's called a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside the restraining collar that normally contains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter, resulting in a coin that is larger than normal, thinner, and lacks the defined raised rim that properly struck cents possess. Another critical error found on some of the most valuable 2000D cents involves off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly positioned between the dies when struck, resulting in part of the design being completely missing from the coin with a corresponding blank curved area on the opposite side. And the most valuable off-center errors are those struck approximately 50 to 75% off-center, while still retaining the date and mint mark visible, so the coin can be properly identified and attributed. Wrong planchet errors represent another category of extremely valuable 2000D cent errors, where the Lincoln cent dies struck planchets intended for different denominations, with the most famous and valuable examples being those struck on dime planchets, creating bizarre hybrid coins that have the Lincoln Memorial cent design, but the smaller size, different weight, and distinctive composition of a Roosevelt dime. And these cross-denomination errors occur when planchets from different production Runs get accidentally mixed together, usually due to human error during material handling or equipment maintenance when bins or hoppers containing planchets for different coins are not properly segregated. Some 2000D cents were struck on foreign planchets or experimental planchets that were being tested for potential future composition changes, creating coins with unusual weight, color, or magnetic properties that immediately identify them as something extraordinary. And while the Mint has never officially acknowledged the existence of some of these variants, specimens have been authenticated by major grading services and have sold for substantial sums at auction. Die crack and die break errors also appear on some valuable 2000D cents, with the most dramatic examples showing what collectors call major cut errors, where a large piece of the die actually broke away during production, creating a raised blob of featureless metal on the struck coin surface that can obliterate significant portions of the design. And when these major cuts appear on the obverse covering parts of Lincoln's portrait or extending across the date area, and especially when they appear in combination with other errors like doubling or off-center striking, the value increases dramatically. The authentication and grading process for these high-value 2000D error cents is absolutely critical because the substantial money involved has unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and coin alterers who attempt to create fake errors through various deceptive means, including mechanically adding doubling to normal coins, artificially creating die cracks through post-mint damage, or even fabricating entire fake coins using altered or counterfeit dies. And this means that serious collectors must insist on third-party authentication and grading from reputable services like PCGS or NGC, who employ expert numismatists trained specifically in error coin authentication and who use sophisticated equipment, including high-powered stereo microscopes, precise digital scales, X-ray fluorescence analyzers for composition verification, and detailed photographic databases of known genuine errors for comparison purposes. The condition or grade of these error coins plays an absolutely crucial role in determining their value, because the difference between a coin that circulated and shows where versus one that never entered circulation and remains in pristine mint state condition can mean the difference between a coin worth thousands versus one worth millions. And this is why the most valuable 2000D error cents are those that were discovered shortly after production, either by mint employees who noticed something unusual, by collectors who found them in fresh bankrolls before the coins could become worn through handling, or by individuals who received them in change and had the knowledge to recognize their significance and the foresight to preserve them carefully. The market dynamics for these ultra-rare error coins operate at a completely different level than typical numismatic transactions, because we're talking about pieces that appeal to a very small group of elite collectors worldwide who specialize in major modern errors and who have both the financial resources to spend millions on a single coin and the expertise to appreciate the significance of the errors. And when premium specimens come to market through major auction houses, they're often accompanied by extensive publicity campaigns, including full-color catalog descriptions, professional photography showing the errors in detail, provenance research documenting the coin's history, and expert opinions from recognized authorities in the error coin field. The discovery stories surrounding these valuable 2000D cents add to their mystique and appeal, with some specimens reportedly found by bank tellers who noticed something odd about a coin passing through their drawer, others discovered by dedicated coin roll hunters who searched through hundreds or thousands of rolls specifically looking for errors and varieties, and still others that allegedly came from mint employees who recognized unusual coins during production and retained them, though such retention would technically violate mint policies and raise legal questions about ownership. The investment potential of these coins attracts not just traditional numismatists, but also wealthy individuals looking for alternative assets that can appreciate significantly over time, especially unique items with absolute rarity where the total number of specimens can be counted on one hand. And financial advisors who specialize in tangible assets sometimes recommend that clients with significant wealth diversify into rare coins as a hedge against inflation and currency fluctuations.